Wow, I managed to get that all together without messing it up. Must mean I've already had some caffeine, and that is true. I really appreciate you joining with me for this hour. I know that you have other things you could be getting on with, and I know some of you will be doing those things as I talk, and you'll be watching this later. But thank you so much for spending time with me. So, what's happening at the moment? Well, we've kind of established a new. I'm not going to say normal because it's still a bit, but a new way of doing things. We're kind of getting used to the new pattern. Good morning, Laurie. In that our 8 o'clocks are kind of well established now. And of course, the thing with the 8 o'clock is that it is a small number of people anyway. So if you'd like to join us, you can just turn up for the 8 o'clock service. Good morning, Vern. And then there's the 10 o'clock. We are slowly increasing in numbers. And yet at the same time, we still haven't achieved the numbers that I would have expected by the number of people that I've already contacted. So if you're one of those people that I contacted and you haven't yet been to the 10 o'clock service, please let me know if you will not be doing, and then I can pass on your place to someone else, because we do have strict limits. Good morning, Karen, and good morning, Holly. It's not a bad day. Well, he says looking through the window where there's lots of clouds now coming from the Gulf. But when I was walking the dog, which was a gazillion hours ago, hence the t-shirt, it wasn't bad. It wasn't as humid as it has been. It was quite good. Hello, Kit, and hello, Mike and Jennifer. It's good to see you all. So 10 o'clock, yes. I do want to boost the numbers a bit so we can get them up to the max level that is possible within our building at the moment, which would be 50, maybe 56. And of course, if you already live together or in close proximity with people, you can sit together. But in strict definitions of having people placed social distance, it would be 50 to 56 people as a maximum. So if you are interested, then please give me a call and I'll let you know. If that's for the 10 o'clock service. All the time we've been doing this, we've tried to maintain a caution as our watchword, that we don't want to do anything that endangers any one of us. And we've done pretty well. I think out of the congregation so far, we've maybe got 2 or 3 people maybe 2, I think, who've actually contracted COVID-19. And then maybe 3 more who have been in the same room, for instance, with somebody who has then been diagnosed as having COVID-19. So we're doing pretty well. We cannot ease back on our caution, though. We need to maintain it, which is why I have to keep saying the same things over and over again. And I'm sorry if I sound like a stuck record, but it's just to remind us that we're still in the midst of all this, that it's not ended. Good morning, Jan. It's good to see you. So again, masks must be worn at all times when you're in the church. So if you've driven to the church and you're coming into the building, you should have the mask on by the time you get into the church. Hand sanitizers are all over the place. They should be in front of you in the pew, somewhere along the pew. There's a huge bottle of it as you come into the church, and there are sanitizing machines if you're going in through the right door, it's on the left-hand side, and if you're going through the left door, it's on the right-hand side. So, and then there's hand sanitizer in the bathrooms as well. Please make use of them. If for whatever reason, and the other thing is, you have to wear your mask correctly. If for whatever reason you feel that I've got to take this off, I know sometimes it just feels so oppressive, then please leave the building, fiddle around with it, or just take it off and kind of relax, and then put it back on and then come back into the church. Social distancing is a requirement. I've added tape along the pews to mark out where 6 feet is, so that you're under no illusion as to what 6 feet looks like. And those are there so you don't slide up in the pews and chat to each other, then move back. And believe me, that's happened. I know, you know, you can't make this stuff up. Um, and remember, it's doesn't take any time at all to contract the virus. I mean, the load may be light, but you will still prove positive if you do contract the virus. And the big problem is that you may never even know it. You may not show any symptoms of it, but other people around you will contract it, and they may do, and it may be very serious for them, which is why this due diligence, this caution is so necessary. People who should not attend, anyone who does not want to wear a mask, which is kind of obvious, anyone with a pre-existing condition or who lives with somebody who has a pre-existing condition, anyone who's either had COVID-19 or has been in contact with someone within the last 10 to 14 days. Good morning, Anne. And again, I'm not telling you anything you shouldn't already know, but it's good to remind ourselves that, you know, that we're not sticking our head in the sand and just saying, well, you know, it can't happen to us, because that's when it does happen. So let's look at the COVID numbers from Johns Hopkins, what I picked up this morning. According to Johns Hopkins, the positive cases now number at 7,804,699, with 215,089 deaths. In Florida, although the testing rates are no longer available, what Johns Hopkins says is there's 736,024 positive cases, with 15,412 deaths. And the positivity rate is 13.22, which has gone down from last week by a huge 0.04 from what Johns Hopkins said last week. And the trend, according to Johns Hopkins, is upward, which is not good. Now, I hopefully don't have to tell you that wherever you go out in public, maintain that social distancing, which is harder to do than you can imagine, really. You've got to be really aware of what your body's doing in space and what other people are doing. Because we're so, even as an Englishman, it's so easy to walk up to somebody and start chatting, and you like suddenly realize, and the masks are good, but they're not infallible. They are to reduce the risk. They do not stop the risk. So don't feel that just because you're wearing a mask that you're 100% safe. Of course, wearing a mask is much better by orders of magnitude than not wearing one. So you do that. And even when I'm walking the dog, most of us will socially distance. We will get out of each other's way. And there's one or two chaps who, when they see you, they'll put the mask on, and as soon as they've gone by you, they'll take it off, which is great. You know, that's again, it's showing due diligence. They're showing that they're taking this seriously. Because let's be honest, the main players who we watch on TV, for the most part, aren't taking it seriously. It's like it's not here anymore. It's gone. It's disappeared. So why do we worry about it? As an Englishman, are they friendly? Who are you asking friendly? Are English people friendly? Or are you asking me, as an Englishman, are the people I meet friendly? I'll let you answer that while I continue. Yes, so it's still raging. We are tired of hearing about this. And it's that what Kit called COVID fatigue. It hits everybody. But this is where we have to show again, we have to be awake. We have to maintain our alertness as to what's going on. What's the saying? There's many a slip betwixt cup and lip. And that's where we are. That we're only one mistake away from contracting it. And I really don't want to be hearing about people. You implied that you were the friendly sort, the English friendly. It used to be true. A lot of people who go to England will say that the English people will just say hello, and you're like, oh, he spoke to me. But it depends what part of the country as well. Some parts they will just suddenly find a very interesting stone on the pavement somewhere and will stare at that as they walk by you. Um, but I think most people's experience of the UK is that they will sort of pass on the time of day as you walk by. And I think a lot of most people's experience of Americans, at least not within the big cities. Cities are a thing unto themselves, but within areas outside of the city, is that Americans are quite gregarious and will talk to you. And I must say, when I walk the dog, there's hardly anybody who doesn't pass the time of day and say hello. And sometimes we actually stop and chat and we get to know each other. And that's even people who don't have dogs, because if you're a dog walker, you find out you know the name of 100 dogs, but not the name of the people who are walking the dogs. So I have a whole list in my head, and oh yeah, that's blah blah whose dog is called, and it's kind of weird, really. I'm sure it's the wrong way around, but that's how it goes at the moment. Yes, so the English people kind of friendly, maybe not so if you're in a big city. It's a bit like what people think of people from New York. I've been to New York twice, and I've had nothing but good experiences, even with the people when I've stopped and said, "Excuse me." I have put on my best English accent, though. Hello, sir. I'm kind of lost. Would you be able to aid me and assist me? And they've stopped and helped me. I haven't done that at all, but probably an accent does help. But they've been very kind, and nobody has led me astray by telling me to go left, right, left when I should have gone right, left, right, which is a useful thing. So yeah, it's we're all in this together, which could be the kind of the strap line for what I'm talking about today. The COVID story, and again, people ask me, why do you bother with these COVID stories? And it's because the number 215,089 is a statistic, and it doesn't get us anywhere. When we think about that is the number of people who have died in the past few months because of COVID-19. And I don't think we can get it into our head. But what we can do is we can get it into our heart, just how destructive it is. And if we look at our own state, 412 deaths within the past few months. Every one of those deaths means something to someone, not just the person who's died. Bill, we found that almost everyone in Bavaria would greet us with, translated, greetings from God on the hiking trails. Oh, that's cute. Yeah, Bavaria. Oh, yes, Bavaria. Greetings from God. You could say, well, they're not greeting you. Greetings from God, but on the other hand, to you from us. I'm sure it's not like that. That's kind of nice, isn't it? That, yeah, I like that. Yes, it's almost like God be with you and also with you. Um, yeah, I like that. That's nice. From Bavaria. I don't really know much about Bavaria at all. Is that where the BMWs come from? Um, Probably beer. Be a lot of beer coming from Bavaria. I remember the TV ads in the UK about Bavarian beer. So I don't know whether I've had any. I wonder if Grolsch comes from there. No, it's probably Dutch or Belgian. Anyway, that's off topic completely. Yes, why do I do these stories? Because it personalizes that horrible, impossible for us to imagine number. And this one is from ABC 30 News, which I believe is in California, at least the stories from Los Angeles. And this was from July the 28th. Yeah, Bill. BMWs and great beer. A lethal combination. The deadly impact of COVID-19 is now being felt in the Los Angeles Fire Department. Jose Perez, a 44-year-old firefighter paramedic, lost his battle with the virus over the weekend. Now his family is sharing his story and his message about the virus. Heidi Perez says that the last conversation she had with her husband was by text message. He said they were putting him on a ventilator. One day later, he died. It's not fair, Heidi says. I don't want anyone to have to feel what I feel right now. Perez spoke along with her 3 children and her husband's partner in the LA Fire Department, Ruben Torres. Torres says Perez got tested after feeling overly tired after working a structure fire earlier this month. Now, this is in July. Can you imagine what they're going through with trying to contain fires? I mean, that's just a nightmare beyond comprehension itself. Quote, that night when he got back, he texted me saying, "Hey, buddy, I'm not feeling too well. I have a fever." He thought it was maybe because he'd overexerted himself. He wasn't feeling too well, Torres says. The next morning, he got the results from the testing site that he had tested positive for COVID-19. 5 days later, the fever broke. But by that time, Heidi and all 3 kids had tested positive too. When Perez's fever came back and his condition got worse, he drove himself to the hospital on July 16, where he would die 9 days later. One of the last conversations I had with him, he said, "This is real, buddy. I thought it wasn't real. I thought it was a joke. I thought I'd get to be back at work in 2 weeks," Torres recalls. He goes, "I can't believe it." As for Heidi, she says she and the children still don't have symptoms. Quote, "This is serious. People need to wear their mask. They need to social distance because my kids don't have a father anymore," Heidi says. It doesn't get any more real than that, does it? That these children now will be growing up without a father and Heidi no longer has a husband. And the fire department, at a time of greatest needs, has lost one of its workers. And the man himself who died, "This is real, buddy. I thought it wasn't real. I thought it was a joke. I thought I'd get back to be back at work in 2 weeks." See the sliding scale there? I thought it wasn't real. I thought it wasn't a joke. And then he got it, and he still didn't take it seriously enough. Not that he didn't do the right thing by going to be tested and he ended up in hospital. But I can't believe it. And there are just too many people who still have that mindset, that they've bought the lie that it's a hoax. They've bought the lie that we can have herd immunity. Well, we could, I suppose, but nobody's really tested the idea that you actually become immune yet. The science hasn't proven that. So anyone saying otherwise, well, they're not talking in scientific terms. And herd immunity, from the statistics that have been done by people like John Hopkins, would require millions upon millions of US citizens to die. Do we want to do that? If we go back a few months, remember one of the politicians saying, we should, the old ones should get to work and let the young ones sort of survive because we've done our thing. We need to sacrifice ourselves. I've never heard anything so absurd in all my life. And what were we sacrificing ourselves for? It wasn't for our families and friends and for the communities. It was for the economy. I mean, that is just stark, raving lunacy of the highest order. Oh, well, this is where we are. Please, 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 even if you're one of those people who thinks it's a hoax, humor me. Wear a mask. Don't be one of those who suddenly finds that this is real. Don't be one of those who says, almost as a final breath thing, I can't believe it. You know that when it comes to intubation and going on ventilators, the survival rate is something like 20%. 80% of those who go on ventilators do not survive. That is a horrible statistic. And honestly, I don't want any one of you to be one of those statistics. So, like I say, humor me. Do the right thing. Even if you think it's a joke, do it for me, if not for yourself. And so to the topic for today. After last week's Bible study with Father Lewis, which I really do hope you enjoy them. We do put a lot of effort in, and then we have to take a lot of it out because we go down so many rabbit holes, which, because we're of that weird frame of mind, we enjoy doing. But if we put a camera on the whole thing, you'd be either absolutely bored to tears, you know, you would be convinced that we're both pretty crazy. That's if you're not already convinced. And you would be sort of thinking, what has this got to do with anything? So we have to do a lot of editing, which is why we write the notes, because we know that as soon as we see one word or phrase, it'll suddenly kick in again. We'll be going down those rabbit holes, which is not a good thing to do. So we're doing it for your sanity. Kit says, early voting starts Monday in Florida. Whatever your preferences, please vote. Yes. Voting in the US is a lot different than in other countries, like in the UK. There you don't have any early voting, and you don't have there is some kind of mail-in voting for those who are sort of incapacitated for whatever reason, but they don't do this great spread of voting like we do in the US. And we're also in the UK and the US, and not like Australia, where they actually give you a day off. I believe this is correct. They give you a day off, and voting is mandatory. Mandatory. Father Lewis, it's your fault. I can't even speak now without sort of second guessing how I'm supposed to pronounce words. Anyway, it is really important. And like Kit says, it doesn't matter who you're voting for, vote. Exercise your freedom, exercise the democratic ideal. I know people are saying, oh, it's going to be terrible, there's this, that, and the other going on, it's going to be a big fraud and a hoax and stuff like that. Well, if that's actually the case, well, why don't we get some of those international inspectors to come in, like they do for developing countries where we know things are really hooky, and they can observe this election. It's kind of, because if what you're saying is correct, that the outcome of this election is going to be corrupted, then why not have outside observers to check that it doesn't happen? Seems simple to me. Or if you're not going to put up, well, just shut up. Paula, good morning. Look at that, and smoothness of that action. I'm getting used to it. Probably going to get carpal tunnel for doing that, but hey, it's worth it. So, a lot of people have been asking me about the Lord's Prayer that we went through last week, and especially about the part about debts and debtors, and the time of trial. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And because I mentioned weeks and weeks, well, months ago now, that what would happen if we started going through the Sermon on the Mount and took it seriously is that it's going to challenge just about everything about us. I find that to be true for myself. I don't know. You could probably listen to some sermons pre-Sermon on the Mount, and then listen to sermons post or during Sermon on the Mount studies. And I recognize, even as I do them, there's a difference in how I'm approaching the text, how I'm approaching things and what it means to me. Because first you preach to yourself, because if it doesn't affect you, then it's not going to affect anyone, is it? I also had a problem last week because poor 8 o'clock people, they didn't hear a sermon, they heard a Bible study. And as I was preaching at 8 o'clock, I'm thinking, this is not a sermon, this is a Bible study. And so when it came to the 10 o'clock service, I just riffed. I did an extempore, and with no relation to the thing I'd written. So hopefully that was more of a sermon than the 8 o'clock. So to the 8 o'clock people. I apologize for that. Um, I had not got myself out of the Bible study mindset. And when I sat down to write, tippy tappy, tippy tappy, I produced a Bible study. I will try not to do that again. Anyway, so that's how I approach things. When it comes to the Lord's Prayer, when I do morning prayer and evening prayer, it's in the Lord's Prayer is in morning prayer and evening prayer. So I read at least twice a day. But since doing the Bible study on the Lord's Prayer, I've started parsing it, teasing out what the Lord's Prayer means and how it applies to me and how I apply it, rather than whizzing through it in a rote way. I don't think I've done it the same way twice yet, which is fascinating to me, but that may be because each morning's and evening's scriptures and psalms are different. So I then see a different slant on the Lord's Prayer. So what I thought I'd start off by doing is just going through the Lord's Prayer and kind of imagine you've got a delicious caramel in your mouth. And instead of just going chew, 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 swallow, you're allowing it to sort of melt in your mouth, and you're luxuriating in the flavor and the texture. And this is what I'm trying to do with the Lord's Prayer. So I can't remember what Bible version this is, but our Father in heaven. Yes, Lord, you're in heaven, and heaven isn't necessarily a place that we try and imagine. Heaven is where you are. Hallowed be your name. We praise your name, Lord, because you are worthy of that praise. And your kingdom come, and your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, because only when your will is done will we know peace and love and perfection in our lives. And only when your will is done here will we be able to sort of reimagine our lives within your love, which is something we can barely do. We can see what's wrong, but we can barely see how, if those things were righted, what would come out of them. Give us today our daily bread. Always, Lord, we remember that you are the source of all things. There's nothing that we have of our own that we can say, well, this is mine and nobody else's, because it all comes from you. And forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. Lord, you love us before we even know it. You love us even while we're in our sins. And you call us to love all people like you love us. And so you call us to forgive. Not that we expect others to come to us and say we're sorry for what we did to you, but we forgive them anyway. And it is incumbent on us to forgive so that we can look to you and accept the forgiveness you give us. Let us never be cheap in the grace you've given us. Let us always try to give as you have given. And do not lead us to the time of trial, but deliver us from the evil one. Lord, I know there will be things this day where I have to make choices, but let my choice be always pro you, for you. Let me move away from those things which would distort and destroy my life, my faith, that remove me from your presence, and let me move always forward into the things you would will for me to do. And again, I've just done it massively different than I did an hour ago. So I hope that kind of helps you just to sort of reimagine the Lord's Prayer as the framework upon which you hang everything else. And it slows you down as well. It's not, our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. I remember there's a singing version of the Lord's Prayer, which is at a clip. I can't remember the hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, hallowed be thy name. It kind of loses all sense of meaning because you're just singing a tune with familiar words, whereas these need to be chewed upon, relished, imagine, just and then it in a way kind of enjoyed, even though they ask a lot of us. They ask a great deal of us, but they are so fulfilling. How God will work and move through us if we take these words seriously and slow them down. So I hope that helps. When it comes to that almost last bit, do not lead us to the time of trial. We had some really good. We had a couple of good questions on last Thursday's Bible study, and we tried to answer it. But I've had a couple of equally good questions since then. So I thought I would kind of revisit trials and temptations a bit more, and look at what it might mean to have trials and temptations. Now, if you remember, one of the early things we learnt about the Sermon on the Mount is that it's to do with a Jewish wisdom understanding of how we live our lives. And we use the words wholeness and flourishing in a sense that's kind of philosophical, because most of the surrounding philosophies from the Greco-Roman world were to do with how do we live our best life, which is kind of the name of a current book, isn't it? A New York Times bestseller. And what is the goal of the best life? Well, for a lot of the Greco-Roman philosophers, the goal of living a best life was to do with happiness and contentment and fulfillment and things like that within a religious structure that is completely different to the Judeo-Christian religious structure. So when we come to look at that question, what does it mean what does life mean? What's the philosophical goal of life? For us, the goal is God, to please God, to get nearer to him. And within Christianity, it's to become like Christ and to become fellow heirs, brothers and sisters with Christ in the kingdom of heaven. And that isn't something that we just say, Jesus Christ, I ask you to come into my heart as my personal savior, and then boom, you're done. It takes the work. And it takes seriously the Lord's Prayer once again. Now, Jesus calls us to follow him. And he calls each and every one of us as a disciple, as one who is being taught. And disciple has within it the word discipline. And so we look to him not only for the lessons we need to learn, but we then have to start practicing the discipline of being a Christian, of being a disciple. It's a bit like me saying, I've got myself a guitar, and there's 3 behind me. So I am a guitarist. And yet I've never picked one up, I've never tuned it, or may have tuned it, but I never learned any of the notes on it. I've never learned any of the chords on it, or I may have done, but that's about it. I've got kind of a couple of weeks in, and then I've gone on to something else. It's like there's a keyboard behind me, and there's a piano here, which is what I use for studio recordings when I get the opportunity. Can I play the piano? Absolutely not. So just by dint of having a piano doesn't mean to say I'm a pianist. In the same way, just by calling yourself a Christian doesn't make you a Christian. It's what comes on. It's what happens within the discipline of becoming a disciple. And this is not easy. If there's one thing you've learned from the Sermon on the Mount so far, is that what Jesus is asking us is, I just went off the scale with my note then, waiting for some bats to turn up and hit the window, because it is astonishing. And as Father Lewis and myself will tell you, he uses the word eschatological, end times. The Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount isn't some kind of theoretical construct that we'll look towards completing when we're dead in heaven. It's something we start now. We begin the discipline of the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount now. and it isn't easy. Jesus tells us that the road is narrow, that we need to take up our cross, whether or not our life is under threat. I don't know why some people think that when they imagine the cross with Jesus, it was a cross of death, but it's not necessarily what Jesus is calling us to do. It's something which is a burden. It's something which weighs heavily on us. It's something which slows us down and drags us. And in this life, there's so many different things that do that. And Jesus is saying, well, we have to accept those things. And yet at the same time, we move forward towards Jesus, to become like him, to join in with him. And that is really, really hard. Some people have an easy life. They kind of gloss through things. And other people, they just seem to live with unrelenting misery. They just cannot escape the next thing that's going to happen to them. The loads just beginning to lighten. Then all of a sudden, boom, something else comes into their life and crushes them. And they get up and they're crushed again. And that kind of human spirit is just incredible to watch. Jesus also tells us that we have to be righteous. We have to have a wholeness that not only exceeds that of the Pharisees, but as in Matthew 5:48 tells us, also exceeds God's righteousness himself. And we're like, oh, come on, you've got to be kidding. That just cannot be true. But these are the words of Jesus. And, we don't, have a video of him going, I'm only kidding, really, kids. But he's being deadly serious. And included in all of this is this notion of trials. Now, it's not exactly that God puts us before things, or puts things before us is probably a better way of putting it, that we need either to get over or around. It's that life itself throws at us things that we have to get over or around. And how we get over those things, or how we get around them, or how we get through them, though I go through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, shows whether we've accepted the challenge and whether we're growing or not. And this can be likened very much to a refining process, in that it purifies our motives and motivations and strengthens us for the next battle. Some people just seem really imperturbable, that they've had so much going on in their lives, and they've won so many of those battles and gotten through them, that when something happens to them that would sort of make anybody else just fall to pieces, they're so stoical. I'm using a Greek term there, but they know, they're so strong inside that they know that this too shall pass. And those are people we need to sort of attach ourselves to, because they're the ones who are going to help us in our journey when things go pear-shaped, and we are given a choice. And this is where the temptation and the evil and deliverance comes from, within the do not lead us to a time of trial, but deliver us from evil. It's really, really interesting trying to figure out what's going on when you're doing it in theory, but when it happens to you and you're struggling to make sense of what's going on, am I drowning or am I waving? And this is where the community comes in, and this is where the Holy Spirit comes in as well. We kind of forget about the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is possibly the most underutilized part of the modern Christian life. For the average Christian, the Holy Spirit invigorates us to do what is right. He plants within us what we know should be the right path, the thing that we should be doing. And this is God's work within us. Whereas the world and the devil can offer us easy outs to just conform to the norms, things that don't cost us, that don't make us flourish, don't strengthen us on our journey of flourishing. Now, I've done it all in a kind of theoretical way, but I'm going to talk now in concrete terms. And there's nothing better than using examples that come, but that are well known, don't involve us, but really kind of highlight what's going on here and what's meant by it. So here are the examples, and some of you may be happy in what I choose and some not, but they're well known. And out of these, we can sort of show you what I mean about trials and temptations. And the first example is of Bill Clinton with his infamous quote, "I did not have sex with that woman." It's a world-renowned phrase. It's going back how many years now? A heck of a lot. Where does this line, do not lead us to a time of trial, but deliver us from evil, come from? And how does it apply here? Well, remember when Jesus was talking about, you have heard it said, do not commit adultery. But I say to you, even if you look with lust at a woman, you've committed adultery in your heart. Now, there seems to be this idea that the idea with Jesus saying in your heart, it lessens lessens. So it's not adultery, it's just lust. Okay. Now, the problem with that is that when Jesus and when Jews use the words heart, it isn't just a kind of emotional center, it's the center of our will. It's a center of our being. It's to do with all our motivations and everything. So it's a whole thing. So when we look at somebody, in terms of lust, what Jesus is saying, we already imagine a picture of being in bed with them. We go above and beyond just thinking, wow. No, we picture this whole scenario where, it's an open and shut case. And in the old-fashioned movie times, a door will be so slowly closing on the camera. It's that kind of thing. It's a whole body experience. And it, even though in terms of what it does to the community and what it does to personal relationships, is different. As far as God's concerned, and as far as what Jesus tells us, it is exactly the same. So this leads us into this, lead us not into temptation, where Bill Clinton has this opportunity. He can go, my goodness, I am so aware of the fact of what I've just thought. How do I escape from this? How do I rid myself and follow through? If you're a Christian, you're saying, and follow through to do the right thing, to flourish and move in wholeness towards God. Now, it could be that if you happen to be the most powerful man in the world as president, you will assign that person who's causing you to lust to a different position. You don't take it out on that person. You don't fire them and blame them. It's because it's you. You're personally responsible for what's happening within you. There is a very narrow way through here. And unfortunately, and sadly for Bill Clinton, it didn't go into that wholeness category and coming out the other side, just sweating bullets because you've dodged a bullet. No, it moved into action. So when you're looking at this, you say, okay, on the one side, as a Christian, I'm being led by God to do this action. And that's the only one that he will accept. At this other time, my mind, my body, the whole of my being is telling me to do this. And sadly, since the time of Bill Clinton, it seems to be that the ideas of adultery are almost commonplace. And not just ideas, but the actualization of it. But it all starts with that one thing. Ooh. And out of it comes two sets of actions. One where you actually go from ooh to the utilization of and physicality of that response, and one where you don't. So, so God isn't testing you there. The test involves, how are you going to remain faithful to God? How are you going to remain faithful to what God is calling you to be? And at the same time, the world or the devil is saying, it's all right. Who's going to know? It'll be between you two. Nothing's going to go wrong, and all the other explanations you give to yourself as to, well, it doesn't really matter anyway. It's only this, this, and this. And I did not have sex with that woman, which is horrifying as a statement, because we now have lots of teenagers, many of them who are promise keepers and have said they will abstain from any sexual relationships until they actually get married, who believe that there are certain things you can do together which don't constitute having had sex, which is a real mind mess, if nothing else. So that's the first example. The second one is way more current, and this is to do with Lindsey Graham being on camera and saying that, all right, yeah, we're not going to let I've forgotten the guy's name now, Barack Obama present this candidate for the Supreme Court, and I'm doing this on principle. To the point that if it happened again the next time we're getting towards an election, and you can take my words to the bank, I'm not going to be calling that we have meetings to have a new Supreme Court judge. I'm going to say, no, we shouldn't do this, because I've said it now. And, how did he put it? Play the tape or something like. You can play the tape, and we know that is absolute rubbish now, don't we? Because we have played the tape, and he doesn't care. So what's going on here in terms of being a Christian? Well, we're told by Jesus, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything else is of the devil. And this is to do with how we make oaths and how we become truth tellers and how we become reliable people upon and trustworthy people. So you can imagine, saying what you're saying 4 years ago and pretty much meaning what you're saying, because you're thinking the possibility of it ever happening is pretty remote. And so you kind of hung on your own petard when it does happen again. And you are the people still in power, and you see this huge opportunity to change things for the benefit of your party. And if you're into your ideology that much, for the benefit of the country, for the benefit of the people, and you kind of, oh dear, we now have the opportunity to get another Supreme Court justice. But 4 years ago, I said, if this happens again, I will be on the front line saying, nope, we're not going to choose a new Supreme Court justice. But on the other hand, this is an opportunity. It's too great to pass. But on the other hand, I said this. Do you see where the trials come in here? If you're a Christian, your word is your bond. You follow through, even if it's inconvenient to you, even if it's going to upset a whole bunch of people. Because 4 years ago, or however many years ago, I am on the record, and it doesn't matter if you're on the record or not, because God knows, I said this. And I want to be shown to be a man of my word. I want to be shown to be a man who even will act against his own interests, because I am a man of my word. And that is the Christian God thing. The trial here is to say, it doesn't really matter. Expediency demands that I forget what I said 4 years ago. I'm going to go on and do the thing which I find really good for me now, really good for my party now. Again, if you actually believe your own ideology, really good for the people now. That is really damaging, is it's not only damaging to you personally because you've lost any integrity you may have had, and why should we believe anything you ever say again on any subject? It's also damaging if you do claim the name of Christ, that you're a Christian, because you've just sullied the reputation of everyone. Because if this is how Christians behave, why would I want to trust any Christian when they say X? Because it may be when expediency calls that they're just going to be like everybody else and go for Y instead. You fail the test. You fail the trial. You've been tempted by the devil, and the devil won. You've been tempted by the world, and the world won. Time is it? Oh, doing pretty well here. Finally, we come to the nominee for the Supreme Court. And honestly, I have no axe to grind about these people. I don't even know enough about them to have an axe to grind. But it's just so topical. And one thing the church should be, and clergy should be, is topical. And so we have this lady, Amy Coney Barrett. What do we know about her? She's a Roman Catholic. And she seems to be a very faithful Roman Catholic. Excuse me. With that, I'm going to have a drink. I hope this is good. With that comes certain things which should be there. That Amy Coney Barrett is a pro-life candidate, which means she's anti-abortion. And that's what the church teaches. It also teaches lots of other things to do with the Catholic Church teaches. I should say the Roman Catholic Church teaches. Everybody knows that. So when she's written her position papers and done other things throughout the throughout the years, it should come as absolutely zero surprise to us that she's taken a very strict pro-life anti-abortion view of which resonates very well with the Roman Catholic Church's teaching. That should not surprise us. Now, when it comes to her making decisions based upon her beliefs, what she should be saying, without any fudge, is that, yes, this is where I stand. If something comes before me and it's saying this, this, and this, then this is what I believe, and this is what I would do. Of course, laws that come before any judge aren't necessarily so cut and dried. They have loads of nuance in them, and a lot of law is to do with dealing with the nuance. Sometimes the nuance gets thrown out with the baby and the bathwater, and sometimes the nuance helps can create a whole bunch of new problems. But we know where she stands, and it would be wrong of her to say that, well, you know, if Roe v. Wade turned up, I wouldn't know what I'd say. Yes, you do. If you're against abortion, you'd want to make sure abortion was, if not abolished, but so reined in so tightly that very few people got it, if any. That's what you would do, because that's what I'd do. At the same time, though, we hear that what she speaks of in terms of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, in that she thinks it should be repealed and collapse, which suddenly makes me really confused. Now, remember, this is hypothetical. We do not actually know how she would vote for any of these things. But from what she's written and what I've read of what she's written, and some of it's really interesting, we have somebody who's pro-life, but that idea of pro-life seems to stop when the birth takes place. Because the one thing we know of is that if the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, is abolished, repealed, then lots of people are going to lose their health care. And to me, being pro-life is that society not only accepts this person who's pregnant and the unborn child, but then when that child is born, accepts the responsibility for the mother and the child in terms of what we do for them as a community, as a society, that we provide them with decent health care, that we provide them with education and opportunities and good housing and all these other things that really should be a no-brainer when it comes to being pro-life. That we have a justice system that is equitable. That the penal system, if people end up in jail, it isn't so they can just rot or get tattoos or become a huge bodybuilder or work their grift from within the system, but that we do try and redeem them. That we give them tools, or at least try and give them the tools, so that they are rehabilitated. And that if people do the worst things possible, be involved in murder and child abuse and other things, that we show the mercy of God and also show the fact that we are not judges, but only God is the ultimate judge, by not having a death penalty. That is what pro-life means to me. And yet, from what I've read, she seems to be pretty okay with wanting to get rid of the ACA without anything in its place, which would put those mothers who have gone through the birth process and their children in great jeopardy. And I just don't get it. Because for me, there is a logical consistency of the wisdom Jesus is asking us to follow. For example, am I my brother's keeper? We have to remember how this was said. Cain and Abel. And God says, where's Abel? And Cain goes, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? And we know that we are. We are our brother and sister's keeper. The parable of the Good Samaritan. We have to ask the question. We don't, not just of the Samaritan, the outcast, the outsider, the one who looks after him and pumps some money into helping this poor person who'd been robbed, and asked the house, I was going to say barkeeper, the keeper of the inn, if you spend any money, I'm going to come by and I'm good for it. I will pay whatever you need. What about those who walk by? The ones who are in a hurry, the one who didn't want to be ritually unclean. Are they responsible for that person other than responsible for ignoring them? Yes, they are. They have chosen not to follow that narrow way. They've chosen not to follow God and the natural outcome of seeing people as my brother, as my sister. You can rail all you want about abortion and how terrible it is. I could. But when you don't care afterwards what happens to that baby, there's a problem there. And if you're a Christian and you say, abortion bad, don't care what happens afterwards. I mean, you may not say you don't care. You may want to say, well, ACA is this, and this. But when the natural outcome of what you say is really bad, that children don't have access to good medical care, if any, that mothers, parents just struggle on and on with no help for daycare, lousy schools, lousy housing, then there's a problem. And as a Christian, what does it say about you? How does all this fit into the Sermon on the Mount? Well, because Jesus is asking us to be in the position of those who have nothing, those who struggle to find justice, those who have no voice. And we are to become justice for them. We are to be the voice for them. And it's really, really hard. Sometimes we're just so good at wanting to blame others. And it's not that long ago, it's within the last 4 years, where we actually heard one of the senators, I think it was a senator, say, oh, well, the poor, well, Jesus said you'd have the poor anyway, so why are we bothering doing anything about them? I mean, you can't make this stuff up. So I hope that kind of just shows you the weight of what the Lord's Prayer is saying to us, the weight of what the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes is pressing us to do and be. It isn't just head, and it's not just heart. It's the whole of what we are, and the decisions we make that not only lead us into wholeness and flourishing with God, but also can have an effect, a real live effect on others. Sin, even if it's only internalized, still has a community aspect to it. I think we've forgotten that in our modern age, where we prefer expediency to discipline. And as Christians, the discipline we have comes from our promise, our pledge to God to follow Jesus, even when it's at our disadvantage. So thank you for joining me this hour. I do hope you've gotten something out of it. Please stay safe and remember me in your prayers as you are in mine. So until Thursday, when I hope to be here with Father Lewis for afternoon tea at 3. Stay safe, God bless, and bye for now.